I'm Spinosauruskin.
And what do you do?
I do YouTube videos about men's rights.
Okay.
I'm Josh O'Brien. I do much the same, although not recently, but I'm going to start again.
Do more videos.
I'm doing them, don't worry.
I guess I started watching Dr. Randomacam's videos. And then I started, and then I discovered more MRAs, and I realized how few voices there were. And I thought this is a really important topic and it needs to be talked about more. So I just started doing YouTube videos. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but I just started.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for me it was, I sort of just happened to come across something, I think it was one of Karen's videos, and it just spiraled out from there, and it was the sort of same thing. I noticed that there wasn't anyone talking about it, that it needed to be talked about, and there particularly wasn't anyone young in Britain saying a word about it, so I thought, well, if no one else will do it, I will. Well, I think it's hard to tell how much of what went on was passed on from higher down the chain, because when I was talking to Reggie and a couple of the guys who I met, they seemed really cool, they seemed to really want to listen and get what I was talking about, and then when I watched it back, of course, they were, it was much more of a hit piece than they had made out to be. I mean, the one real egregious example was that they told me, I asked at one point, oh, what's this documentary going to be called? Because you actually haven't mentioned it at any point. And they said, oh, Reggie UK. And I was like, oh, that's fine, that's neutral. And then it came out, Reggie 8's Extreme UK Men at War, which I was like, oh, okay then. And then they were also like, yeah, it's about MRAs and stuff. And then it was loads of stuff on Roosh V, and that guy who tweeted something bad at a female MP at one point.
That was cut out.
Was it?
Yeah, after that, I watched it on BBC iPlayer, and then I watched it a couple weeks later, and that segment completely disappeared.
Oh, weird.
I have absolutely no clue what happened to it. A lot of other people, because I asked other people about, oh yeah, like that troll who had nothing to do with men's rights or anti-feminism, and then some people asked who.
Yeah.
They'd seen the rest of the documentary, but not that part.
That's weird.
It was really weird.
Yeah, I don't know, they treated me well while we were filming, they paid for my travel to London and stuff, and they bought me lunch, and, they were nice guys, and I don't think any of them went into it with any malice. I think what it was when it got to the editing room, there was, the shadowy executive standing there telling them, cut everything out, make it bad. But, yeah, it's hard to tell because, it could well have just been a front from them. But I certainly think I came across fairly well in that, and I'm not sure how much of that was me and how much of that was them being more nice with it. So I'd do it again because I'm not scared to take that risk. The one thing that they cut out that I was annoyed at was we did an interview after Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. None of it made it in. But at one point during that, a guy walked up and he was sort of quite a tough-looking guy, had a face tattoo like Mike Tyson's, and he stopped me and he started talking to me, and he was talking about how he'd been in an abusive relationship and how great it was to hear someone speaking about it, and he was really receptive, and he actually started crying a little bit at one point. And they said to him, can we use this footage? And he said, yeah, of course you can. Nope. Cut out, completely cut out. And they also cut out the entire positive response that I got from the people at Speaker's Corner, because Rod and a couple of the other guys got heckled quite badly, whereas I got nothing but positive responses from people who were coming up and they were asking, but men and women as well. They were coming up and asking for more information, for studies, for sources. None of that made it in.
And I've been talking to Bane666 about this as well, is we've noticed that the way the media, at least in the blogosphere area, has changed its tone very differently within the past few years. It started out with MRAs are just misogynists, and they did the whole friend zoning thing, and they hate women and they just can't get laid. Then it started to change to these men's issues, they actually exist,
but feminism is the solution.
Feminism is the solution. Now you're getting the odd article where it's saying there are good MRAs out there that aren't anti-feminist. Just stop talking about feminism. But the bad MRAs are all the anti-feminist ones. And it's and what they tend to do is they tend to use they tend to use organisations like the Good Men Project as an example of good men's rights activism. And
But it's just
obviously,
not men's rights activism at all.
It's not it's not men's rights activism, and number two, it is not good for
yeah.
anyone.
Well, there's that.
Any feminist, one of the best things to do is to ask a feminist what is a non-feminist pro-male group, and then go into that group and find out what they're doing. It's always feminist propaganda, and it's always toxic masculinity. Men are evil. Boys' problems are all boys' problems are all boys' fault.
Yeah, that's definitely the way it goes. I think the media basically takes whatever tack they can. And with me, I think they had a much harder time taking the sexism option, and so that's why they tried to play up the fact that I was living at home at the age of 18 and stuff, which just like really normal things that everyone is doing, because they couldn't go with that sexism angle. And so I think what it is the BBC, and there's plenty of studies you can read on this, the BBC is left-leaning. You know, the people within it are left-leaning, compositions of panel shows are always more left-wing than right-wing. And even though men's issues is not necessarily a left or right issue, and it's completely distinct from that thing, and if anything, it should be a left-wing cause because it's a progressive equality-driven cause. But of course, the left is not about equality anymore.
And actually, I think the fact that you're more right-leaning and I'm more left-leaning, it's a good example of how we can just sort of sit here and we completely disagree on economics, and we've argued multiple times, but still, who cares? We can work together.
It's a unifying thread, I think. We're not tradcons. We don't have any of that vestigial conservatism left over from living in a time before feminism. So I think Lucian was talking in one of his talks, he mentioned how the rebellions against communism didn't come from people who'd lived through communism and capitalism. They came from the youth who'd only ever known communism. And I think that same sort of thing can have an effect here, where we don't know what the traditional 1950s life was like by experience, and so we're a lot less prone to sort of viewing that as the golden age, which means we can actually push for... The article on men's called Breaking the Pendulum, and it's about swinging between tradcon and feminists.
Wasn't that Dean Esme who wrote that one?
I think it was.
Yes. And it's the fact that we've grown up in this society. We have the experience from birth, growing up with the feminist propaganda right under our noses, and then not seeing it, and then working out how to see it, not seeing it implement when we're about 30, and then watching it grow till we're about 60.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important.
And now, what do you think would be necessary to make men's rights appealing to young people?
Well, watch my talk and find out. No, I think in large part it comes down to playing up the things about the men's movement that the youth look for. It's rebellious, it's anti-establishment, it's saying, screw you to the accepted wisdom, and it is anti-traditionalist in its core, which I think young people are appealed to by. And, young people are more left-leaning, they're more equality-driven, and that is what this is. It's an equality movement. It just happens to be an equality movement that seems to be populated by a lot of right-wingers because the left has given up their responsibility about equality.
Well, the left uses equality as a bludgeon.
Yeah, it's now a weapon rather than an actual goal.